Hi, everybody. This is Cindy Kennedy. You're listening to another episode of Living with Lyme. Today, we are really excited because we're going to talk a lot about neurology and brain health with Dr. Conn Litwin. He is fascinated by the brain. He practiced general medicine, and then a colleague introduced him to functional medicine, and it was all uphill from there. Well, uphill sounds bad, doesn't it? Downhill sounds worse. But anyways, he became very infatuated with the area and now treats people down in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, alongside Kara Fitzgerald, Dr. Kara Fitzgerald. So welcome, Dr. Conn. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Cindy. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great now that I have you here because this whole area, as we talked before we started, a lot of people have some neurologic issues and just kind of pass them off or are really not in tune that there could be a problem. So, you know, it's a big area, but I want to jump in and talk about a lot of cognition decline in America. And I wonder what you think about that.
Well, as you know, and probably everyone knows, somebody they in their family or a friend or somebody they know had been affected by Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, and it's a growing problem that will, unfortunately, probably bankrupt a lot of the world's economies. Because once you get to the point where you're having other people provide care for you, the cost goes up not only for the person being cared for, but for the caregivers, which is really horrible. In other words, you might see a lot of younger people just starting out in life. They got married, they just had kids, and now they're faced with taking care of a parent who has dementia, and
Yeah, it's really hard.
that's
It's
that's a really
unfortunate.
tough thing.
Yeah, they were on the Today Show. They were doing a poll on what was the happiest time in your life. And then they talked about the worst time in people's lives. And it's that 40 to 50
hmm
age where they're sandwiched. You know, they're still trying to get those kids out the door. And then all of a sudden the parents are coming in the door. And
hmm
that's a very, very, very difficult area. You know, there's a lot of different levels.
Sure.
So, and we talked about the fact that a lot of people don't realize what kind of levels are there, and when should family, members say, "Hey, mom, hey, dad, I'm noticing something," or maybe it's their spouse. You never know. But when is it time to say, "Hey, we've got to look at, some testing"?
hmm Well, I would say, I mean, usually the person affected would be noticing it first, and then it would spread outward in a circle. Probably the last people to know would be, you know, people at work, because people affected by cognition problems will do anything they can to hide that from affecting their job, and they'll do all kinds of things. They'll make lots of reminders. They'll I don't know. They'll adapt, but it's hard to hide that from yourself. I mean, you can kind of reason with yourself that forgetting the name of an actor when you're watching a movie or something like that is happens to everybody.
Oh,
And I
thank
think,
God, thank God.
and,
I'm like,
and
oh my
Cindy,
God, I have
Cindy,
to Google everything.
I think a lot of that is just because we are multitasking way too much, and the brain is really it's not designed for multitasking at all. It needs to do one task and move on to the next task, and that's less and less, available possible these days. So you're probably just, thinking about something else. Your brain's busy, and then you can't access
I've
that
never
actor.
been good with names. I've just that's one of my
hmm
downfalls. But you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking how many post-it notes deep is a problem?
Right.
You know,
Right.
when, like, my husband writes a note when I have to have him get something on the way home and he sticks it to the steering wheel. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. I mean, that's what he has to do. But you know, sometimes we just like add a post-it note to look at. It's like a scavenger hunt. Okay, now what was the actual thing we had to do? You know, go here. Oh, look at the one on the door. You know, I mean,
Exactly.
you know, it. But I suppose if you are multitasking and we've got a lot of burners on, it does burn us out a little bit.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, when you go back to the person at work that, or the people at work that may not notice, um, Dr. Dan Cameron took care of me, and I was like, I don't know if I can keep working anymore. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, keep working. He said, as long as you really can, keep working, because
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
limeys, he said, are really good and they're very task oriented. And, you know, when I was
Mm-hmm.
doing my job, I was a GYN nurse practitioner. Luckily, I wasn't new at it. So it was kind of, you know, cookbooky. And so I would figure out
Mm-hmm.
how to get through things. But I've heard of people with Lyme that, you know, look at a keypad to get in, you know, security system and absolutely blank on what the
Mm-hmm.
code
Mm-hmm.
is. And is that part of the I guess I would have to say the inflammation in the brain, or is it another process that's going on?
You know, I think there's a lot of crossover between this concept of brain fog and uh, that sort of thing that you're describing, and actual uh, problems like permanent damage or at least temporary damage to areas of the brain that can recover. And you know, a lot of times people will have brain fog, which is really, it's kind of a happy way to describe something that's quite important and can be very severe. So I don't know what else I would call brain fog, but it's a cognitive impairment of sorts, right? I
Yeah,
mean, you're
well, it
impaired.
feels, you know, sometimes people will describe it as you're trying to think through mud, right?
Yeah.
Or you're walking around in a constant Benadryl fog. It's just
Draw
every.
fog, that's a good way to put it.
Well, you know, Dr. Neil Spector was on the show, and that's the way he described it. And from that point
Hmm.
on, it made sense to me. It's
Yeah.
just sometimes you just rather not think
Well,
than try.
it's a lot of effort. You have
It's
to
an
really
effort,
try hard.
exactly. It is an effort, and that becomes where it impacts your friendships and your family and your, you know, especially marriages, because
Hmm.
it's just too hard. It's too hard to plan. Social events are tough. You know, hosting, forget it. You know, I'd rather, yeah, let me, you know, let's go somewhere else, or let's not. But in what can people, you know, I saw a statement that was really impressive to me, and it said treatment is not good without prevention. So it's kind of like an oxymoron there,
Hmm.
but in general, if we're treating things, wouldn't it be better to take a step back and say to people, listen, I want to protect your brain. These are things that you can implement in your life now, especially if you've got a family member. That just freaks people out,
Hmm.
knowing their genes, their APOE
Right.
genes and things like that. So, what type of prevention? You know, the first thing I'm thinking of outside of just diet is your micronutrients. How important is that to assess and to deal with?
Sure. Well, when I'm assessing somebody who may have uh, early dementia or they've actually been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I'm looking at a quite a long list of tests that many of which are nutritional tests. So there's vitamin D in there, vitamin A, C, E, beta carotene. the omega-3 index, um, and you're really trying to get all of those not just into the quote normal range, which is what's listed on your laboratory report, but into the upper normal range. And when you have all these labs, some of which are for nutritional things, optimized, then the whole system is going to just be working better, and you're going to be less likely to get into trouble with cognitive decline.
What about hormonal levels? We look, we think about that. I mean, generally, you've been trained with IFM, and I have as well. The first thing they teach you is go to the gut, go to the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, is that part of it? And then do you move on to hormonal issues like men with their testosterone and women with
Mm-hmm.
all of their essential hormones and your thyroid? Talk to me about that.
So, I mean, uh, taking into account gut health, nutritional health, lifestyle, important things like sleep, exercise, stress management, and then hormones, toxins, all those are important. But if you just list them all off and you don't have a strategy, it's kind of hard to get them all where they should be. And you need a systematic approach to doing this. And I've done this. I've actually done this on myself. I make myself a spreadsheet and I keep track of all these different things that are supposed to be just right. And this is what I do for my patients. So I figure I might as well do it for
I
myself.
know if it's good enough for you, it's got to be good enough for them.
So the whole idea of applying functional medicine to preventing cognitive decline or treating dementia, it's been around for a long time. I mean, naturopathic doctors have been doing this stuff forever. But Dr. Dale Bredesen out at the Buck Institute in UCLA came up with, after many years of research, a um, a program which basically takes into account all these lifestyle, functional medicine type things that we'd be looking at, and makes a strategy where certain factors just have to be optimized. And when you optimize all these factors, you get less formation of amyloid plaque, which we can talk about, and more removal of amyloid plaque. And generally, that's right where you want to be.
Yeah, because your brain isn't like your liver. Your liver can regenerate. Your brain, I think, cannot. Am I correct or am I off?
Oh, Sandy, I used to think that about all the organs in my body, all the cells in my body that, couldn't regenerate. But that's just not true. I mean, um, we we have tools that we can use to actually make new stem cells, which is just amazing to me. And that includes the cells in the brain that can make new neurons and new connections between your brain cells. And this explains a lot about why somebody who's, for example, had a stroke can recover. There's this idea that there's neuroplasticity, which is basically that you can make new connections between the cells that are still working right. And not only that, but you can make new neurons, which is just amazing.
Well, how do you teach your body to do that? I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing all the right things, how do you know it's going to the right place? How do we direct it that way?
Well, I mean, it goes back to the whole concept that if you take away all the things that are harmful, your body knows what to do, and it'll try to repair itself. You just need to allow it to. So you need to be, giving it enough sleep exercising and taking away stress hormone cortisol. So you know, as far as the neuroplasticity thing, basically there's a hormone in your brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and
Ah,
that's
that's what that
stimulated.
stands for.
Yeah, it's stimulated mainly by exercise, and basically
Ah,
you're inducing just a temporary stress on the system by making the cells work a little harder, and then they release this hormone also by stimulating uh, increased blood flow and oxygen through exercise. Also, there are some other techniques for getting that produced, but generally speaking, that's one of probably many. We don't even know all of the growth factors needed for the brain, but that's a big one.
pardon me while I do a few push-ups and a few
Well, Cindy,
calisthenics here. Let's just move.
well, Cindy, you don't have to run. You don't have to train for a marathon for that. It's like what I do every morning is a 10-minute, like high intensity workout, sit-ups, jumping jacks, burpees, whatever. And it just gets my heart rate up enough to stimulate that increased blood flow and production of that brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that's all you need. Now, if you want to do more, that's great, but that's like your minimum.
That's great. That, people think, again, when I talk to them about exercise, I try not to use the term exercise because that scares people. I talk to them about their
Mm-hmm.
movement. And I have to be clear that I'm not talking about
True.
in the bathroom movement. I'm talking about, your actual physical movement through space. What are you doing? And, a lot of people are like, I don't have time. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you got to make time. You have to make time in 10 minutes. I mean, really, how can you argue with 10 minutes, right?
I basically I go in my kitchen. I put on the tea kettle, make my tea, and, start doing my thing right in the kitchen. My wife hates it because I move the mat that you stand, one of those
Oh,
mats that
yeah.
you stand on for
Yep,
comfort.
yep, yep,
And
yep.
I
Yeah,
move
but
it
you should
into
be
the,
jumping on that to help your knees,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I do that. And my wife thinks I'm crazy, but, uh,
Yeah.
you know, if that's how I fit it into my morning routine.
But that's okay. But that's okay. And that's insight into someone who knows what would be best for them. And I mean, if we can't copy you, we shouldn't be copying anyone, because
Hmm.
you're the expert on this, and that's real important. What other type of cognitive testing do you offer?
Cognitive testing.
Yeah, like, are you
So
doing any type of memory,
sure,
things? Do you teach people memory skills?
it's well, it's really important to get an objective view of a person's cognitive health, because just telling me that you forget where you put your keys, and that's helpful, but um, and sometimes, if it's severe, that's a red flag. But I mean, I've done tests on myself where I scored
Oh,
much
that's
worse than I
really
would like to.
objective. That's not objective.
So there's this great test
Oh,
called CNS vital signs.
I'm gonna laugh because they're where I live. They're doing some sort of leaf blowing or whatever.
Oh, no
It's
problem.
notorious. I don't care what day, what time. I swear it's a magnet, and they come in, they blow the leaves, or they cut the lawn, and it's just like, oh my god! And I don't have a
uh,
soundproof
I actually
room.
think the leaf blower is one of the most invasive, things for my well-being.
Yeah,
And I know that sounds extreme, but you can't really, like, you can't go anywhere and not hear a leaf blower.
I
You
know,
could be hiking or whatever, and you can still hear one.
I know, I
So
know.
let me get back to that. So the
Yes.
CNS vital signs is a great test, and it puts together a number of tests where you're trying to remember a whole list of words and what did they put the word or not, matching shapes to each other, colors to each other. And I've used it for both people who've had a concussion and for this screening for cognitive impairment. So that's a very helpful test when you're trying to prevent cognitive impairment. It gives you an idea how you're doing, and you can track it over time. If you've already gotten to the point where you really think you have some issues, you might have already brought it up to your doctor or seen a neurologist or something, then we're talking it's time for a standardized test that's well accepted by everyone as being able to diagnose what sort of stage you are, which you referred to earlier.
Right, right.
So you do this test called a Montreal, it's called a MoCA test. So it's a Montreal cognitive score. It's invented by this neurologist, but it's available online for free. And there are some good YouTube videos about how to score it in case you want to do it on yourself.
Oh, I'm scared, but I'll let you know.
So, you're allowed to miss a couple questions on there. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't always get the date exactly right. Like, I'm off by one or something.
Okay.
They give you that.
I think the year is the most important, don't you think? Oh, listen to these guys.
Yeah.
Honest to goodness.
I mean, they'll give you a few points for that, but you have to be able to copy a diagram, remember 5 words, count backwards by 7s.
This is too much.
It's we'll deal with it. So that's a really important test to do. And if you score well on that test, then what you probably have is more of a subjective cognitive impairment. In other words, it's affecting you and you know it's a problem, but it's not showing up on this test. And that's an important distinction, whether it's subjective cognitive impairment or objective, which kind of moves you to a different stage. And then the third category, which the first two is kind of like what you would call mild cognitive impairment, which doesn't necessarily mean you're destined for dementia. It just means you're at a higher risk. But when you want to diagnose dementia, it has to be affecting your life in definitely in terms of your memory, but also some other facet of your life it's affecting. It could be affecting your ability to pay your bills or whatever, shopping, cooking. It has to be doing something where you can't necessarily adapt completely.
So the question is, have you ever gone drunk shopping?
Drunk shopping?
Yeah, drunk shopping is when you have a margarita and you go next door to the gift shop and you're like, oh, I just love this. I got to have this and I have this. That's different, I suppose. But
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably not common in men, but it's more common in women.
Well,
like, see this
vacation,
necklace?
sure.
You gotta see this necklace. See this necklace?
It looks.
See? Yeah, that's a specialty necklace from Cape Cod.
Oh, okay. So they got you while you were relaxing on vacation.
Yeah, my friend owns the Gilded Oyster right there in Falmouth. Kudos to her. Yeah, and my friend and I had the margaritas and went in there. we got twinsy necklaces.
Well, these days it's pretty easy to do that online. And regret it later.
Oh, yeah, that's a bad one. So, we talked a little bit about nutrition and supplementation of things that are out of balance, but in general, if someone is trying to be preventative and they're not yet in a situation where they have, the ability to be evaluated, what would you say that people say the 3 or 4 top things that they really should concentrate on in terms of either their diet or a supplement to enhance what they're eating?
Well, people always want an easy thing to do, like a supplement, but um, you know, I just think you have to focus on the foundations first, and maybe you can't get them all perfect right away. Like maybe you're working 2 jobs, you're up at night, and you can't get your sleep just right. That's okay, but keep working on it. Exercise, and then people kind of underestimate the benefit of having a tool or set of tools to deal with stress.
Mm.
And then nutrition. Nobody's perfect, but generally speaking, uh, get the junk out of there, especially the sugar and the simple carbohydrates and the processed foods. The toxicity that you get from pesticides or other toxins in the environment. And I know it all seems overwhelming, but you do it kind of, kind of gradually. You just kind of pick one thing and work on that until you get that right. And this is where it's super helpful to work with a health coach. I found that extremely helpful for my clients who come to me already with dementia, and they have a lot of them are a little older and they have very set ways. They have to have their one cocktail at night because they're retired, or they love, they look forward to their scoop of ice cream or whatever it is. And it's really tough for them to just wrap their head around the fact that those things are damaging to their brain. They're causing inflammation, and I try to phrase it in not a threatening term like damaging, but I just say they're not helpful. Like, you should be doing things that are helpful for your brain, not unhelpful. So let's identify all the things that are unhelpful and try to get rid of those and bring all the things that are helpful in.
So the coaching keeps you accountable, right?
And you cannot have your significant other, spouse, nagging you to do this. That is just unfair, and that will cause a lot of burnout in your
Right,
in your loved one, and
right,
that's
right.
not helpful.
I think to help my patients kind of follow, a healthier diet is part of my program is they work with my daughter Kara. She's a registered
Mm-hmm.
dietitian. So she gives them strategies. She says, okay, I got this great recipe for avocado mousse. And it's using, really good cacao powder, and it's
Mm-hmm.
using, ripe avocados, maybe a little honey, maybe a little almond milk to soften it up. But, that kind of stuff actually tastes good, and it kind of fills that gap, like even
Yes,
freezing bananas and whir those things up, and it makes a
I
good
totally
ice
agree with
cream.
you, Cindy. You cannot just take out ice cream and then tell them, well, sorry, there's nothing for dessert. You have to give them something.
Right.
Now they may complain that they don't like uh, whatever it is you're coming up with. I had this one person who just doesn't like stevia. She doesn't like monk fruit. She wants sugar. Uh, you know, but you try to work with it.
Right, right. Yeah, because I think people, when we say to people sugar is inflammatory, big deal. How much, is that like surmountable? Like I have to have like 15 teaspoons of sugar a day to make a problem? Even though small
Mhm.
amount makes changes in your system, and your system actually identifies it as an invader, and then that's where your cascade of inflammation comes, and then I guess it's your weakest link, whether it goes to your gut or your brain or your joints. Isn't that
Well,
true?
this is where it's important to get some objective data. So it's nice to have your fasting glucose, your fasting insulin level, a hemoglobin A1C test result. And, you know, we're not just looking for the standard here, like, oh, your sugar is 105, that's fine. No, it's like, it's supposed to be less 90 or less. Your insulin, oh, it's 10 or 12. No, like it's supposed, like I just did mine a few months ago and it was 11 and I said, oh, that's horrible, my insulin level. And my A1C was like 5.6, which, to most doctors, that's great, fabulous. But to me, it was like horrible. And I said, I have to get this A1C down to like 5.2. My insulin needs to be 3.
Well,
Um,
what was the reason? Did you come up with, did you talk to yourself in the mirror and say, hey, Ken,
okay,
you got to
Cindy.
knock off
Cindy,
that?
I was hitting the dark chocolate a little too much at night. That's what
Oh,
I think it was.
no.
Yep.
All right. So, how
And
long is it going to take till you retest? How long do you think it'll take you by reducing or eliminating that before you could see a change?
well, I kind of went drastic on myself, and I did a fasting mimicking diet, which I'm not sure if you've heard of, but a lot of people do fasting, like a water fast or bone broth fast or something like that, which is good, and it does achieve a lot of good results. But really doing it for 5 days straight, I don't know that
Mhm.
many people that do that. And when you do it like that, you probably will lose some muscle.
Mm.
Uh, you will definitely, lose weight and generate some changes in your metabolism. But the one that I use that on myself is it's not like you go to the store and you buy all these things for your fast. It comes in a box, which some people don't like because it's kind of reminds them of a processed food. But it's an all vegetarian diet. It comes five little boxes, one for each day, and it's about 700 calories a day. Um, and you do that for 5 days, and you will definitely lose weight. Depends on where you're starting from, how much you lose. You'll lose waist size, which is kind of a side effect of the diet. The main reason to do the diet is it resets your metabolism. And you will definitely notice that your blood sugar type test, insulin test, will drop a lot. The higher it was, the more it'll drop, percentage wise. And it actually stimulates stem cell production, believe it or not. So it's being studied for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, uh, diabetes, uh, many other things, cancer
How about
treatment,
cardiovascular?
definitely. So they have a
Yeah.
lot of studies going for it. So if your listeners want to know what that is, it's called Prolon,
Yeah.
developed by Dr. Longo.
Yeah.
So I just did a cycle of three of those cycles, and I did my tests again, and my A1C is still being a little bit stubborn. It's like 5.5, but my insulin dropped from 11 to 3, and my all your lipid numbers will get better.
Well, you
And
said three. How far apart?
so the clinical trial that's been published was one 5-day program once a month for 3 months in a row.
Okay. Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. We're having them on the podcast in a
are
few
you
weeks. Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of it, and I like it because it just takes all the work out of it. And I know that sounds lazy, but when you're fasting and you're trying to do your work, you can't be bothered, making something from scratch.
Right.
And you also, uh, you don't want to be tempted by stuff. So like everything comes in this little box. That's it. You don't get anything else that day. You can kind of come to terms with that.
Is it hard? Let me ask. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, ooh,
I would say, for me, it was not hard at all. And then the second and third time I did it, I kind of knew what to expect, and it wasn't that bad. For somebody who's coming into it with, a diet that maybe they drink 10 cups of coffee a day, or they're eating ice cream and lots of snacks. There's a certain emotional component that people might have trouble with if they have some tendencies towards eating due to emotions, which I
ooh,
do. So um, you definitely learn when you're eating because you're having some emotion rather than you need it.
yeah. I'm waiting for a whole group of people to say, "Hi, Ken." In a support group here, wow, you eat
Yeah.
chocolate a lot. Hi, Ken.
Well, I admit it.
But that's okay. That's part of the process of healing. It's saying, hey, well, everybody, it's funny because I have
mhm.
a friend who says, hey, I don't do drugs. I just blah, blah. And it's like,
Oh yeah.
oh, it's kind of like making, an excuse. And it sounds so good that you just kind of go on that path. But
I think
it
as
is,
long as you recognize that you have that craving,
yeah.
then you can do some things to deal with it. Now, if you have some more deep-seated issues, this may be a good time for you to see a uh, special kind of therapist, like I my favorite these days is called a somatic trauma therapist. I don't know if you work with those therapists, but people who have like issues from their childhood that have
Mm,
affected their eating can benefit a lot from that, where they might not have benefited from talk therapy.
mm-hmm.
That's one of my go-tos for people like that.
Right, right. And
And don't forget, you have to remind people that what's going on in your gut is affecting what you're craving and what you're getting into. So if you have, a lot of yeast overgrowth or something like that, you may just be, you know, feeding those and giving them sugar. And it can be very important for those people to work with somebody like us um, to treat their gut issues so that it's a lot easier for them to get off of that junky stuff.
right. Speak to genetics.
All
And we
right.
know genetics are a predictor. They're not a definitive type thing, but we have epigenetics,
Mm.
all the things that surround us that can impact our genes. What do you say to someone who comes maybe to you because their family member has had dementia issues,
Hmm.
and that they carry the more deleterious gene or paragenes, and they say, oh my god, Dr. Litwin, now I'm going to do my will because and power of attorney because someone's going to have to sign my checks
Hmm.
in like 2 weeks. So what do you do? How do you explain things to people?
Well, I mean, there are some unfortunate situations where there's a family history of early onset dementia, which are related to just a few particular genes that basically cause increased formation of amyloid plaque when people are very young, definitely younger than 65. And you can tell that that's a problem because you take a family history and it goes back a few generations, because they are generally speaking called autosomal dominant genes, meaning if you just have one copy, you will probably have that condition. So that's extremely rare and just a very small very teeny percentage of the entire population of people who get Alzheimer's. The more common form of familial type hereditary Alzheimer's is due to the ApoE gene, which is an interesting gene. And to look at it evolutionarily, it may have been advantageous for people to have an ApoE4, which is the one that gives you the more risk for Alzheimer's, because it's generally associated with an increased response to things like infections and injuries. So maybe evolutionarily, those people lived to survive, you know, a tiger attack or whatever it was, and they healed up and they didn't die. But over time, as people live longer, that gene, that allele from that gene, ApoE4, sets you up to just have more of an inflammatory response to pretty much everything. So you kind of take a good thing and you go overboard with it when it's not necessary. For example, you know, Lyme disease, for example, or mold toxin exposure, they're going to cause a lot of inflammation, and your body's trying to deal with it, but it's kind of not able to fully get rid of the infection or the toxin, and it just perpetually causes this level of inflammation. So back to your question of what do I tell people
What
about
was the
genetics?
question?
I tell them that you can have an ApoE4 allele or two, and the lifestyle changes that you make and the approach should be the same, and you will still have enormous benefit from doing it. There was a study done in Finland called the finger study, but basically that showed that people that have ApoE4 did respond to lifestyle changes in terms of less cognitive decline and dementia.
Okay, so
So
there's
there's
hope
always
after
hope.
all.
And you brought up epigenetics, which is what
Yeah.
it's all about, which is the fact that you may have a gene, but you can guide your system um, towards maybe not having that gene turned on as much, or as you know, basically all the genes that I've looked into that have to do with Alzheimer's, they have something to do with inflammation mostly. And if you can kind of turn those genes down a little bit with epigenetics, meaning all the things that we're talking about, sleep, exercise, nutrition, then you may not have as much inflammation leading to the cognitive impairment or decline.
You know, you said something you wanted to talk about amyloid plaques. Can you describe them?
Well, I mean, there's a gene, there's an amyloid precursor protein gene that makes amyloid plaque, which is actually one of your defense mechanisms in your brain, and the immune cells in your brain actually respond to things getting in there that shouldn't be there, like viruses. It's like particularly this herpes simplex 1 virus is particularly known for it, but anything that gets through into your brain, which we know it does now, from heavy metals to infections, will turn on this gene more, and you'll have sort of a walling off effect. So all those injured brain cells need to be walled off so that they don't kind of jam up the works communication-wise. And what happens is you form a plaque if it keeps going for too long, and then that whole area of your brain just isn't functioning, and the brain cells there will they'll cease to function.
They do.
So
They get choked off by this amyloid plaque.
yeah, I
Is
mean,
that a good thing to think of?
it's not a good thing to think
Well,
of,
no.
but it's scary to think of.
Okay, I didn't mean it
But
like that.
basically, you know, you just wall it off because it's a problem. Now the good news is that is the same gene that makes that's making the amyloid can be, manipulated in all these ways. Back to our original discussion about all the different factors that you try to optimize. So just by dropping your insulin level, your fasting insulin level, you will enable the removal of amyloid by another enzyme uh, that gets rid of insulin and gets rid of amyloid, and you'll end up having less amyloid plaque as a result.
I wanted to say, as I'm thinking about it, people, you talked about the fasting protocol that you utilized, but I want people to understand that if we go back in time to the cavemen time, that's where, in terms of our evolution, we started eating more after that time. But if you look back to then, it was a feast and famine time, because they would, get their hunting skills going. They would bring home something, they would feast on it, and then
Yeah,
they'd
and there
have to
was
go back out to look
no
again.
refrigerator.
Yeah, no refrigerator, so you
Had
had
to
to
eat it.
eat it. That's the idea. But that's
Mhm.
where our kind of our genes and our ability to be as healthy as we can, we need to promote some of this time. We can't be gorging all the
That's
time.
right, Cindy. So while maybe for some people eating small, frequent meals might be helpful, which is what I used to tell people.
I know
Now,
we've changed our tune a little
now
bit, huh?
I've changed dramatically, and I'm a big fan of what they call intermittent fasting, which is really just a period of time where you're not eating while you're sleeping, 3 hours between dinner and bedtime, and maybe if you want to go a little farther, don't eat until 10 in the morning or even noon or something like that. I think you don't need to be excessive. The return on investment goes down the more hours you're fasting, probably, and
Right.
and um, it's hard for some people to do it. But generally speaking, for most people, breakfast is not the healthiest meal of their day. It's like the worst meal of their day. It's like a bagel, it's a donut, it's some cereal, which I used to think was great, eating a nice brand cereal or something like that with some fruit, you know. So now I think having that extra time where I'm not driving up my insulin levels is helpful to my overall health and my brain health.
Well, you think about it, there are people a long time ago when I was, really on the bandwagon of small and frequent, they would say, but I'm not a morning person, but I'm not hungry
Hmm.
in the morning. And we would try to do like the preemptive strike, you have to eat. It's the most important,
That's right. That's
meal of
right.
the day. And, it turns out in some respects we're like a little bit of hypocrites, because we're like,
So, how did that come to be? It's probably a food industry thought, don't you think?
oh
Like,
yeah, we're
how do you
captured.
sell cereal to kids and adults? You
Yeah.
tell
A
them that
long
they need it.
a long time ago, my dentist, who's a friend of ours, had said something about not really being a fan of breakfast cereal. And I was like, ugh, what the heck's wrong with him? What's wrong with Cheerios,
Right,
And
right, right.
yeah, and that's what we did. We trained our kids to go downstairs. We'd leave a little pitcher of milk in the fridge. So on Saturday or Sunday, they could pour
Hmm.
their cereal in their milk and
Well,
be so healthy, right?
it's probably safer than telling them to make their own eggs or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We kept him away from the stove as as much as we could.
So
Yeah,
so I don't know what you do for breakfast now, but all of my patients who I'm helping with this cognitive decline, they pretty much have coffee or tea, and they do a fat in the coffee,
Mm.
like an MCT oil or something like that, which doesn't work for everybody, but I think it can be very helpful. And generally speaking, they never run into hypoglycemia. You have to watch out if you're starting with someone that's already uh, at a low weight. They probably don't have a lot of glycogen stores in their liver, which they need to turn into glucose, and they might have some crashing. So I'm a little careful with that. Also, the older male patients, or even the younger ones, they tend to lose too much weight when I put them on this low carb intermittent fasting sort of towards the ketogenic end of things diet. And I have to be really careful to make sure they're maintaining their muscle mass.
And so how do they do that if you're working on the intermittent fasting portion of it?
Well, I still try to keep the period of time, but uh, they have to make up those, and eat enough protein later in the day and fat.
Right, right. I get that. I get that. I get like if I eat you know, I'm trying to think of the part of the day that really bothers me. And I think it's like right before lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, right before lunch, I'm like, ooh. And so I'm probably
You mean
not
like you
that,
feel tired and
yeah, I feel tired.
so
I
you
need,
went a little too, well, I guess you went a little too long and you ran out of glycogen.
yeah, yeah. I always feel better when I have my lunch and have a good piece of, protein. I think that
Yeah,
it does last me longer. Yeah.
definitely.
And there's good food out there. You got to remember to grocery shop around the perimeter. You stay out of those aisles and,
Right. That's right.
yeah, yeah, cuz those can be dangerous.
So
Tell
I
me.
have to supplement people's
Okay.
snacks. Their choice of snacks is kind of, they're used to, I don't know, pretzels, or they thought that, I don't know, a few years ago I was eating pretzels for a snack. Uh, or I would eat dried fruit, which I thought was pretty healthy, or like roasted nuts that maybe had a little, something on them. so,
I
so
want to party with you, cowboy.
yeah. So, you know, I've had to adjust gradually. I didn't do this all at once for sure. But now, like a snack for me would be like, I don't know, some carrots, some raw mixed walnuts and almonds or cashews or something like that. So maybe some coconut flakes. That would be a snack. And maybe to some people it doesn't sound like
I
a
know.
good snack, but the longer you're away from the processed foods and the simple carbs, the the less you care if you have it or not. I've just noticed
Exactly.
that over the last few years for me.
Exactly. I like to slice up an avocado,
Uh-huh.
put a little salt, little pepper on it, and that's actually lasts longer because it's kind of like a healthy fat, like the coconut oil. Excuse me, like that coconut oil.
I'm a huge fan of avocado. I wish that they didn't cost so much these days, but hopefully that'll happen, or I'll have to move to California and grow my own. But avocado is a huge thing. Coconut oil, I was a huge fan of that initially, because why is coconut oil good? Well, it contains medium chain triglycerides, particularly the 8 and 10 uh, carbon chain length, which are the most easily transported from the cytoplasm in part of your cell into the mitochondria to make energy. So that's why MCT oil is so important and popular. because it's like an efficient way to make energy, and your brain cells, of course, like that. But coconut oil doesn't really contain that much MCT as a percentage. So if you're just eating coconut oil hoping that you're getting MCT, it's not really the best strategy, and you're going to be eating a lot more saturated fat than I think a lot of people want, because especially if you're ApoE4 status, I think those people tend to have a higher cholesterol level to begin with. And while I'm not like a big believer in like the number of your cholesterol is that important, more important is whether you have a lot of inflammation to go with your cholesterol that sets you up for atherosclerosis. I still think that you probably don't need as much saturated fat as I was eating when I was making all my vegetables in coconut oil. So I switched over mostly to avocado oil when I'm cooking at high temperatures, olive oil at lower temperatures, and to put on my food after I cook it. And then some other, nut oils, macadamia oil, stuff like that.
Oh, macadamia oil. I
Well,
haven't found that one
it's a
yet.
good taste. Hazelnut oil, if you're not allergic to that. So
Right.
um, definitely healthy fats is important, and don't underestimate the fish oil, because uh, I mean, fish oil is good for so many reasons, but the main one people think about is it's going to generate anti-inflammatory signals, prostaglandins and things like that, which will reduce the level of inflammation in your body. But don't forget that one of the fatty acids in fish oil, DHA, the other one's EPA. DHA is really your main building block for making brain cells. So if you're not eating enough DHA, which is probably somewhere around 900 milligrams a day, you're not doing your brain enough good as you could by eating fats. So whether you're eating salmon or sardines or something like that, which I love, or you're taking some sort of capsule, you're not a big fan?
No.
No. Well, the good news is that you could take algae oil, which is actually pretty high in DHA, not really high in EPA. Your body has to convert it to the EPA. But you can get algae oil capsules
Mm.
that that have a lot of DHA in it.
That's great. And I think I want to talk to people a little bit about not buying their fish oil at a big kind of vendor. I freak out when people say, "Oh, I had this big vat of fish
Oh
oil
yeah.
at Costco." Oh, yeah,
Well,
you really got to get a good quality.
my take on that is, and I've taken that fish oil before, so it was inexpensive. I didn't know any better. But you don't know how long that's been sitting in a warehouse. It may be rancid, because it goes rancid quickly because it's not a saturated fat. And you don't know about the purity of it, whether it's contaminated with mercury. You just don't know. And also, the concentration of that product is going to be quite low, and you'll have to take, I think I was calculating for people, they had to take like 8 capsules to get 2 of the one that I wanted them to take. So I'm a big fan of a few brands that go a little bit beyond, and they demonstrate on their website. You can look up the statistics of third-party testing on their product. So you can actually look at your lot number, and they'll tell you there's no mercury in it, which makes me feel better about taking it.
I know, and that's why, I try desperately with my patients to encourage them to get the brands that I'm suggesting, because again, I mean, oh, it's so hard. Money's tight for a lot of people, but
Hmm.
I'm like, in the long run, you're not doing yourself a good
Well,
service.
I did a cost analysis of fish oil from Costco, comparing it to the brand I normally recommend, and it really came out about the same for the milligrams of omega-3 in there. The thing is, they trick you with the Costco brand and it says 2,000 milligrams of fish oil, but guess what? It's only like 300 milligrams of omega-3, whereas maybe the higher quality brand, it's a very high percentage of omega-3 compared to the other brand.
Exactly, exactly. People, the same thing goes with I remind people, you got to look at the serving size, because they read it, and they're misled. They think they're getting a lot, but then they look up and it's like four,
Or the opposite with
six.
food, and they think they're not getting very much as far as sugar, but they're really getting a lot because
Yeah.
they said
Oh,
there's 4 servings in the box and they ate the whole box.
right, right. Well,
So that's important.
denial, huh? Denial. We
Well, they
really,
just tricked you.
oh, it is a trick. It is a trick.
So you got to fight back against that.
So, before we close here, is there any big thing you want to, get across to people? Is there anything you want, after we've talked on so many levels and so many angles for people? Is there something you want to tell people?
I mean, I really do think this way of strategizing to take away all the negative influences on brain health and give it all the positive ones is your overall strategy. So you can break that down into different categories and uh, talk about nutrition, talk about more antioxidants, phytonutrients, what types of foods are really important for brain health. My favorite, like you said, avocado, blueberries, walnuts, salmon, stuff like that. And then sleep, stress management, exercise. Real exercise is like the only uh, modality, the only treatment that all neurologists agree on is exercise. They will not ever give you a hard time about, oh, I don't want you to exercise. No. Uh, which you can't really say about their medications for Alzheimer's. But anyway, so um, just this overall strategy. And then if you want to get into the nitty gritty, you get into the lab testing and optimizing all these nutrients, which we mentioned. I just saw a study today, just from like last month, about 800 units of vitamin D per day, uh, preventing cognitive decline. Like, that's not a lot.
No, no.
Um, but you can't view a supplement just by itself. I don't know what else they did in that study. It's hard to believe that just vitamin D did that, but that's great if it did. Um, but you brought up earlier hormones. Hormones is a big part of it. And just a little pearl here. Uh, when women are going through perimenopause, menopause, that's when I see a lot of cognitive decline. And I see it more in the women that actually take really good care of themselves. They're not overweight. They exercise. Guess what? They don't have as much body fat. And when they go through menopause, uh, their ability to generate estrogen from their fat cells, which you convert testosterone to estrone in your fat cells, is limited. And they kind of go into a bit of an estrogen withdrawal. And I think of estrogen not as uh, it's not like a nutrient, but it's like it's a protective thing. So if you have Lyme disease or mold toxicity or elevated blood sugar or whatever is going on causing the trouble in your brain, the estrogen helps to minimize that. So I definitely think getting checked out for your hormones is essential when you're getting close to that age. because
Very
there's
good.
maybe some things you could do about it.
Right, right. Yeah, that is important. And balance, I think it's across the board. It's all balance. We really have to balance the body because there's so many things that impact our life that kind of throw it out of whack.
Hmm.
This has been a incredible interview and an incredible amount of information for people to digest. But you're available for people to see, and they
Hmm.
can find you. Give us your. I'm going to have it on your bio and all that, but give people your.
So the website is functionalmemoryrx.com.
Okay.
And if you go there, there's a great ebook that you can download very inexpensively. And that contains a lot of what we talked about today in more detail, some really fabulous recipes that the nutritionist I work with, Lara, came up with. And it's a great overview. And there's even a list of some labs that you might ask your doctor to get in there to start with. Also on that website are some webinars that we've done. We did a general overview. We did one on genetics, one on toxins, one on nutrition, and then you can, if you're interested in making an appointment, you can do that. I like to see people before they have problems or early in, because it's a lot harder later to turn things around. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's a lot easier to do early.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I think you're going to get a lot of people. Going to have to do a group rate.
Okay, yeah. So that's one thing that we're looking to do is because there's a lot of things that everyone should just uh, get some knowledge about and start doing even before they come to see somebody like me.
Right.
And because you don't really want to spend your money and time talking to me about what you should be eating. You should already have kind of a general idea about that before you come in, and then we'll do all the investigations to figure out what we need to address.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful.
It
It's been
has, Cindy.
wonderful. It's been, yeah, it's really great for everybody.
Even,
This, go ahead, go ahead.
even with your leaf blower, it's okay.
I know, Jesus.
It's all
for,
right.
for everybody, you have been listening to Dr. Conn Litwin, and we've learned so much about our brain and the importance to protect it. Please subscribe to the website, www.livingwithlyme.us, so that you don't miss a podcast. Looking forward to our next one. And thank you. And you may also visit my professional website at www.pursuewellness.us. We'll be happy to help you as well. Everybody, make it a great day. Look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye now.